A delicious dairy-free homemade pumpkin pie with that classic creamy filling and just a little extra something crunchy on top. Sally that girl in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally That Girl in the Kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make a dairy-free pumpkin pie, a traditional pumpkin pie, but it's got no dairy in it, so it's perfect to serve on any occasion. This is not just for Thanksgiving. This pumpkin pie is absolutely delicious. We're going to make the pie crust ourselves, and we're going to be using canned pumpkin just to make the job a little bit easier, but we are going to be creating that filling by adding the ingredients to it and just making it taste absolutely homemade, delicious, and extra special. And then we're gonna add a little something on top that's gonna give it a little extra crunch, a little bit of a wow factor, and make it feel super special. And anyone that looks at this pie is gonna know it's homemade and made with love. So I'm super excited to teach you how to make it. So let's not wait another second and let's get started. For the pie crust part of today's recipe, you will need 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, first measured, then sifted, 3/4 teaspoon salt, 1.5 teaspoons sugar, 9 tablespoons of Crisco shortening, which should be pre-chilled, 5 tablespoons of ice cold water, plus a touch more if needed. I ended up using 6 tablespoons in total, 1 large egg, which we're going to be using for an egg wash, and some sparkling sugar, which is optional, but definitely recommended for that extra crunch. And for the filling part of today's recipe, you will need 15 ounces of canned pumpkin, 3 large eggs, 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. I'm going to be using it in paste form, but you can use the liquid vanilla extract or the paste. 3/4 cup of light brown sugar, packed. 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1.5 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice, 1/2 cup of non-dairy creamer, but you can also switch that up and use your favorite non-dairy milk instead. But I really like the creaminess of non-dairy creamer, and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. You will also need a 10-inch pan of some sort. So I'm using a tart dish. This one is resistant to thermal shock because we are going to be going straight from the refrigerator into a hot oven. So if you don't have one that's resistant to thermal shock, you could even use a 10-inch cake pan instead. That would work, or maybe even a disposable one if you don't have a pan that is resistant to thermal shock. Then you'll also need about 3 forks, a pastry brush, a long thin knife, a couple of wet measuring cups, some wax paper, 2 small bowls, a spoon, I'm using a serving spoon, some dry measuring cups, some measuring spoons, a can opener, 2 medium-sized bowls, a sifter, and if you don't have one, then you can just use a fine mesh strainer instead. And you'll also need, if you choose to use them, some cute cookie cutters. I'm going to be using some that are in the shape of leaves to make this feel very fall and very festive. You'll also need some plastic wrap, a rolling pin, some oven mitts, and if you have one, an offset spatula, but if not, you can just use a flat knife with a round tip. That'll work too. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. So first we're going to work on the pie crust, and what I like to do is I like to take a fork and just loosen the flour before measuring it out. This is a good habit to do anytime you're going to scoop directly from the bag or even from a jar where you have it stored. Loosen it up so that you don't over scoop. And then I'm going to add my 1.5 cups of all-purpose unbleached flour right into my sifter or my fine mesh sieve. Then add in 3/4 teaspoon of salt and 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. And then you're just going to bring that over a medium-sized bowl and sift away. Make sure you get all of that flour in. Now, once you've sifted your flour, then you're going to pull out your pre-chilled stick of Crisco, and you want to cut 9 tablespoons off, and then you want to cube that. And then you also want to get your really ice cold water ready. Now, you're going to open up your food processor, and I have mine equipped with a dough blade, but if you don't have a dough blade, a regular blade is fine. Then you're going to add in that sifted flour and all of your chilled cubes of vegetable shortening. You want to get all of those right in. The cold shortening is really going to help get this crust nice and flaky. Then just start pulsing away. You're just going to pulse a few times. We don't want to over mix this because we don't want to heat that beautiful chilled shortening. So we just pulse a few times to start to bring the ingredients together. And then when we notice that it starts to become clumpy, that's when we're going to stop. This is what it should look like. And then we're going to bring over our ice cold water. Notice I have ice in my water. I want it nice and cold, really chilled. And I'm going to start pouring in my water. So I'm going now on my third, and then here we go with our fourth, and finally our fifth, but keep this nearby in case we need a little bit more. And then just continue to pulse, and you're going to see how quickly a dough starts to form, and it just starts to come together. But I still feel like I have some dry flour sticking to the inside of the bowl of my food processor. So I'm going to scrape that down just a touch. I'm going to pulse again a few more times and then see if I need any more liquid. So let's see. Yeah, the flour is still sticking to the bottom a bit. It's not picking all of the flour up. So I'm going to go in with one more really chilled tablespoon of ice water to make a total of 6 tablespoons of ice water. And now look at how beautiful it just completely came together. Nothing is sticking to the bowl. It's perfect. So now I'm just laying out some plastic wrap, and I'm removing my dough, and I'm very gently just kind of forming it into a disc. It's going to make it easier to roll it out if we make it into a disc now, since we are going to be rolling it out into a circle. So now I'm going to wrap it up real well, and I'm going to let it rest in the refrigerator. I'm going to let it rest for 30 minutes. So I'm setting a 30-minute timer. Now, while those 30 minutes are passing, I'm going to go ahead and work on our filling. So what you want to do is grab a medium bowl and grab a large spoon, like a serving spoon, and then you just want to get all of that pumpkin out of the can. So this pumpkin is straight up pumpkin. It hasn't been seasoned. So now we're going to make it into a custard. So what we're going to do is we're going to crack 3 large eggs into a small bowl, beat them well with a fork, and then we're going to add that into that pumpkin to start to create that beautiful custard. And then I'm going to also go ahead and add in a teaspoon of vanilla extract or vanilla paste. Then add in 3/4 cup of packed light brown sugar. Then add in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and 1.5 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. And then you just want to mix that up together. Use the side of your spoon to make sure you break up all that brown sugar and that everything is nicely combined. Then you're going to pour in a 1/2 cup of your non-dairy creamer. This is really going to make it feel nice and creamy, and no one is going to believe that this is non-dairy. Then finally, you'll add 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. You want to make sure you break this up really well, like I'm doing with my spoon. You want to make sure that there are no clumps in this mixture. And then just mix it really well to combine the ingredients. So since my kitchen is really cold, I'm just going to cover this with paper towel. But if your kitchen tends to run warm, then you can put it in the refrigerator if needed. Now our dough has been in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. So I'm going to grab 2 pieces of wax paper, and then I'm going to open up my dough, place it on 1 sheet of the wax paper, put the other one on top, and then use my hand to start pressing down that dough. And then I'm going to switch over to my rolling pin, and I want to roll out that dough to make it big enough so that I still have some leftover space around my 10-inch tempered or aluminum tart pan. So now peel off 1 sheet of wax paper, and then you're going to bring over your pan and carefully flip the dough right into the pan, and then very gently you're just going to press it down into the pan. And then once you've got that in, you're going to gently remove the other piece of wax paper so that that beautiful dough is now lining the entire pan. You see how I'm doing it very carefully. I just pull off my wax paper and there it is. Then I'm going to gently pat it down, and I'm going to use a long thin knife to cut off the excess dough. But we want to keep that dough because we are going to be using that dough. So definitely hold on to it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use our finger and we're just going to crimp the edge of our dough. And look how beautiful that looks and how easy that was. Now, what we want to do is cover this with some plastic wrap because we don't want it drying out. And then we're just going to set this aside for a moment because remember those dough scraps? Well, we're going to come in onto the wax paper, flatten them out, roll them out with the rolling pin, and then we're going to be using our cookie cutters. In my case, I'm using leaves, but as I said earlier, you could use whatever cookie cutters you want, and you could actually use hearts if you want to make this for a special occasion, an anniversary, Valentine's Day. You can use whatever cookie cutters you like. So once you've flattened out that dough, you bring over your cookie cutters, and then we're going to be cutting, in this case, leaves to put on top of our beautiful pumpkin filling. So I like to just push them down real well, then wiggle them a little bit to make sure they're cut, and then just remove the excess dough. But again, you're not getting rid of that dough because we're going to roll it out again to make more leaves. We're going to be using all of those scraps to make more leaves. And here we go. I've got them all cut out. They're laying on wax paper. I'm also going to cover them with plastic wrap. I'm going to place them on a plate to make them easier to transfer into the refrigerator along with the pie plate that is now lined with dough for a full 60 minutes to chill and rest. So now, when there's about 20 minutes left on that timer, you want to preheat your oven to 325 degrees. And then when that 60 minutes have completely passed, we can work on pulling out our dough and getting it ready to bake. So now I've beaten an egg in a small bowl, and I'm bringing over my beautiful pie crust that is nice and chilled, and it's absolutely beautiful, but I'm going to make it even nicer because I'm going to give it a beautiful egg wash, the sides and all. You want to make sure that you get every inch of the surface, and then you want to prick it really well with a fork. You just want to make sure we don't get any air bubbles when we bake this beautiful crust. And now it's ready to go into the hot oven. So place it on a center rack and set a 25-minute timer to allow it to par bake. So now I pull out my beautiful leaves, and I'm now going to give those a brushing of egg, and then I'm going to be adding beautiful sparkling sugar on top because this really gives it extra crunch, and it actually even shines in the light. It looks beautiful, but it tastes like sugar cookies on top of our pie. It's just absolutely delicious. So now we've got our filling ready to go, and we're going to bring out our beautiful par-baked pie crust, which is looking beautiful and smelling delicious already. In case you were wondering why we egg wash this beautiful crust, it really helps it remain crispy even though we're going to add that wet filling on top. So it's definitely a great idea. So now we want to change the temperature from 325 to 350 because we are going to bake this pie at 350 degrees. Now we're going to bring over our beautiful pumpkin custard that we've created, and we're going to add that into that amazing flaky crust that is non-dairy, unbelievably. And then we're just going to use the back of our serving spoon to smoothen out the filling, and just look at how gorgeous this looks as is. You could bake this as is and we're good to go. But we're going to take it one step further, and we're going to be adding those beautiful little cookies, let's just call them cookies, that we're going to be adding on top. So I'm using an offset spatula to make the job a little bit easier, but you could just use a knife with a round tip and just slide them on to your beautiful pie. And I actually added a little bit more of that sparkling sugar because with the egg wash, it had melted down a bit and I wanted to make sure to get it nice and crunchy. So if need be, you could always add a little more of that sparkling sugar before popping this into the oven. So now it's ready to go in on a center rack. Set a 45-minute timer to allow it to finish baking. And after 45 minutes, it is going to be incredible. The house is smelling amazing and it is going to be gorgeous. Look at how absolutely beautiful and golden and incredible this dairy-free pumpkin pie looks. Yes, no dairy whatsoever, and yet still silky and creamy and with a flaky crust and a crispy little cookie on top that is covered with that sparkling sugar for some extra crunch. This is a very special dairy-free pumpkin pie, and anyone who tries it is going to be in awe. They're not going to believe this is dairy-free. That's how good it is. And look at it now once I've given it a chance to cool. This is the hardest part. Let it cool before slicing. It needs to set. That filling needs to set. So I let mine cool for a full hour before I'm going to attempt to slice into it. And look at it up close. You see that beautiful sparkling sugar? I'm telling you, when you try this, it feels like a little cookie on top. It's just so absolutely beautiful. Everyone is going to really appreciate the work you put into this. So now I'm going to use a long, thin knife because, of course, the first slice is always the hardest, so hopefully I won't destroy it, but let's see how it goes. And then I'm going to get to taste it, which of course is my favorite part. So let's see. Well, I'm not doing so great, but I'm not doing so bad. Yeah, that's not so bad considering it's the first slice. And look at how beautiful it is. That filling has set perfectly. It's golden, that crust, beautiful. And then those little cookies on top are sparkly and crispy. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait to take a bite. Wow, it feels perfect. The consistency is perfect and it stays together beautifully. It sets absolutely beautifully. Yes, and it is creamy and delicious, the same way a traditional pumpkin pie would be. And that beautiful crunch on top from those little cookies that we created with that sparkling sugar is extra special. Just stayed golden and crispy on the bottom, and of course that top is crispy and crunchy. Mmm. So good. This is an incredible pumpkin pie. And I'm telling you, the addition of these little cutouts on top with that sparkling sugar really take it over the top. Mmm. Mm-mm-mm. Absolutely delicious. I can't get enough. No one is going to believe this is non-dairy, and it's just as good as a dairy pie. Absolutely yummy. So did I tell you that this pumpkin pie was going to be absolutely spectacular? Well, it is. It's absolutely beautiful. It feels really special. It's got a perfect flaky crust. It's got that creamy, delicious filling that sets beautifully, and it's just perfect all around. And of course, let's not forget those beautiful, let's call them cookies, but pie crust that we cut out and we place them on top and we sprinkle them with that sparkling sugar. And it really feels like you've got some cookies on top of your pie. It makes it feel extra special, and definitely it feels homemade and made with love. So I know everyone that tries it is gonna love it. But don't wait for Thanksgiving to make this pie. You can make this pie all year long. It's that good. So don't miss out on the opportunity. It's absolutely delicious. You are going to absolutely love it. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're going to have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like it, to write me a sweet comment, to share the recipe with your friends. And of course, if you're not already subscribed here to Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on YouTube, stop what you're doing, go over, subscribe, touch that little notification bell so that you get notified every time I put out a new recipe video, which I do all of the time. And of course, explore, go to my playlists. You're going to see there, I have tons of recipes. I have not only desserts, but I have main dishes, side dishes, very typical Sephardic Turkish food. I have all kinds of yummy stuff for you to explore, so don't miss out. And of course, if you're not following me on social media, be sure to follow Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, and on Pinterest. And you can find me as Sally That Girl FL on X, Snapchat, and on TikTok. And you can also find me on Threads, Sally That Girl in the Kitchen. And I've got an Amazon shop, amazon.com/shop/ Sally That Girl in the Kitchen, where I feature a lot of the products that I feature, of course, here in my videos. So definitely check that out. But don't worry, it's a lot of info. But if you travel over to my Instagram or my Facebook page, or even to the banner of my YouTube channel, you're going to find all of that information pinned there. So it's going to be really easy for you to get to. So once again, I just want to take a moment to thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you next time. Sally That Girl in the Kitchen.